I feel like this is Feminist Christmas, so I'm like super excited. I don't know about anybody else, but I was like waking up, ready to go. But I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, this is Feminist Christmas, and it's time to really be excited about what we're going to be doing in Ontario together. I'd like to acknowledge that Toronto is located on traditional territory of Indigenous people, dating back countless generations. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon territory is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited to this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I want to show my respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Ontario. Hundreds of years after first treaties were signed, they are still relevant today. For those who don't know me, my name is Farah Khan. I'm the manager of Ryerson's Consent Comes First office in the Office of Sexual Violence Support and Education, as well as the co-chair of the Provincial Roundtable on Violence Against Women. I'm pleased to be your MC this afternoon. I just want to acknowledge, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I said I could. I just want to acknowledge who's in the room. And who's in the room are people that are not just policymakers, but frontline workers, people that are sexual violence advocates, that are working for change in their community, people that have been working in shelters, violence against women, and domestic violence work for a very long time. And this work is built on the work that you've done and the work of survivors to keep telling their stories. And we can't have moments like this without your countless amazing, amazing hours. Thank you so much. So I don't know if people know, but we have a new Minister of Status of Women. And I'm pretty excited to see her. And her name is Harinder Malhi, and she's a Minister of Status of Women. So let's give her a big round of applause again, and welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so very pleased to be here today and make my first big announcement as Minister responsible for the status of women. And of course, I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Minister Coteau from Community and Social Services and Attorney General Yasir Naqvi. And today we're here, as you all know, to introduce It's Never Okay, Ontario's gender-based violence strategy. Our government has been listening. We have heard the stories of women who continue to live in dangerous situations because they can't find safety. We know women have been waiting days, weeks, and even months to receive counseling services. And we know that survivors struggle to navigate through the legal system. We have heard survivors of violence say, "Me too." Those voices deserve a response because this situation cannot stand. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities, workplaces, homes, and schools. And that's why we are announcing It's Never Okay, Ontario's gender-based violence strategy. This strategy builds on our long-standing leadership and commitment to ending gender-based violence. And it recognizes that we are in a time of change because survivors of violence and harassment are coming forward in greater numbers, and they're asking for supports and services. We understand more about the cycle of violence and the need for prevention. And we know that while gender-based violence can happen to anyone, women and children are at most at risk. The risk is even greater for women who are racialized, Indigenous, newcomers, LGBTQ2, or living with disabilities. That's why we'll be building on the progress already made through our Domestic Violence Action Plan, the Sexual Violence and Harassment Action Plan, the Long-Term Strategy to End Violence Against Indigenous Women, and Ontario's Strategy to End Human Trafficking. In fact, you may remember It's Never Okay and our Who Will You Help campaign, which received worldwide recognition for changing attitudes about sexual violence. This strategy builds off that call to action and the societal awareness that campaign created. we're still saying that it's never okay. But this time, we're looking at it more broadly. We are creating a new strategy of up to $242 million, which will build on these successful government investments so that survivors and their families can get the help that they need. Our government is committed to ending all forms of violence against anyone based on their gender, gender identity, or gender expression. And our focus here is on sexual and domestic violence. Last fall, we sat down with agencies and people with lived experiences with violence from right across Ontario. And I want to thank those of you who shared your experiences with us. The stories you shared with us really helped us build this strategy and build the plan that we're here to introduce today. I want to thank those who came forward to share those experiences. I also want to thank our Violence Against Women Roundtable and the MCSS Violence Against Women Advisory Table. Your ongoing advice and expertise have helped ensure that this strategy has reached as many people as possible, and we're so grateful for your guidance. So thank you for all of the hard work that you've put into this. But saying that, we know that there's more work to do. As long as people in Ontario continue to experience gender-based violence, our work is not done. With It's Never Okay, Ontario's gender-based violence strategy, we aim to meet the higher demand for services and supports now being called for. We're working to meet the diverse needs of survivors and their families. By intervening early and effectively, particularly with young people, we plan to break the cycle of violence before it even begins. We know that children who experience violence themselves are more at risk to repeat violence in their own lives, and that has to come to a stop. Through public education, the strategy will change attitudes and norms that drive gender-based violence. And finally, we're going to take steps to help make our justice system more responsive to survivors. When it comes to gender-based violence, let's continue to work together to make it clear that it's never okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Malhi. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about this. Now we're going to please welcome me in joining Honourable Michael Coteau, the Minister of Community and Social Services.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Minister, and it is a real pleasure for me to be here officially as a Minister of Community and Social Services. This is the first opportunity I've had as the new Minister for this file to make an announcement. In fact, this is my first public appearance as the Minister, so thank you so much for having me here today. We're here today because we're announcing much-needed funding to the agencies that are working so hard across this great province to end violence against women. And I just want to take a moment to thank Minister Helena Jazik, who's been working on this file for quite some time, and she's been a tireless advocate in Cabinet, in our caucus, at the Legislature, and I just want to say thank you to her for working so hard with stakeholders. It's an honor for me today to be here, to be part of It's Never Okay, our government's strategy to end gender violence. And I also want to recognize the sector partners that are here. When I came in earlier, I had the opportunity to meet some of the stakeholders, and they've told me that they've been working on this for quite some time. They've put in a lot of work, and it's so, I think, important that we're here today, and we recognize their contribution to making this happen. So thank you. Our province, our Premier, wants to make sure that women and children feel protected in this province and to break the cycle of domestic violence. We have to ensure that women get the support needed when they need it. While we've made some significant investments, we still need to invest more. In addition to this being an update to the Domestic Violence Action Plan, Ontario's strategy to end gender violence fills in the supports and services that I think are needed. It fills in the gaps that are there. And this investment from my ministry is a $150 million investment over 3 years, and it'll do the following. It'll expand counselling services. enhance shelter, transitional housing, and Indigenous healing lodges, create culturally appropriate spaces for francophones, newcomers, LGBTQ+ people, and provide consistent and flexible supports for children and youth in shelters, which I think is a very important thing as the Minister of Children and Youth Services. They'll support the construction, renovation, and maintenance of buildings where women access while escaping violence. This marks an important next step in our goal of making Ontario free of domestic violence and all forms of gender-based violence. It's clear this is an important moment in the history of this province, as women from all walks of life are telling their own stories of domestic and sexual violence. It tells us as a government how much further we still need to go. Regardless of your gender, sexual, racial, linguistic, or ethnocultural identity, or if you're a senior, if you're an Indigenous woman, if you're a person with a disability, or if you live in a remote or rural community, you should be able to access the services when you need it. The investments we're announcing today will make a real difference in the lives of many women and children and everyone who experiences domestic and gender-based violence. Thank you on behalf of the Premier of Ontario.
Thank you, Minister Coteau. Now please join me in welcoming the Honourable Yasir Naqvi, our Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Farah, and I want to thank Farah and Sly Castali as the co-chairs of the task force and the incredible work they've done, along with all the partners at the table. I had the opportunity to come and listen and present at that task for a few times, and I'm always impressed by the wealth of knowledge and passion in that committee. So thank you very much. I'm very proud to be joining my colleagues, Ministers Malhi and Coteau, here today. As they have mentioned, it's never okay seized on a conversation, and this conversation has not stopped. It's only growing. With Me Too and Time's Up, survivors, women are coming forward. They're demanding change and support. We need to answer. At its core, this is a strategy to help build a stronger system so that those who have experienced gender-based violence and those who are the most at risk will be safer and receive the help they need when they need it. We want to turn powerlessness into empowerment and trauma into healing. For my part, within the justice system, we are doing this in two ways: by strengthening our supports for survivors and those at risk to help them in the aftermath of violence, and by working to ensure that our justice system is responsive to the needs of survivors and their families, and that we are intervening effectively to stop violence. When a person experiences sexual violence or harassment, they often need different types of help and support at different times and from different sources. That's why we are enhancing the capacity of the all victim services to ensure survivors can access supports at every stage. These programs will facilitate 24-hour supports for survivors, including safety planning, crisis response, and help in navigating the justice system. We all know that sexual assault and domestic violence are some of the most underreported crimes in our country. And in the wake of Me Too, Time's Up, and an evolving conversation on sexual harassment and assault, survivors finally feel able to come forward with their stories. And as a result, we are seeing an unprecedented demand for services. We must and will put the investments in place to meet the demand. We have heard about the wait list at our sexual assault centers, and the investments in this strategy are focusing on building capacity to respond across the province and filling gaps in underserved rural and remote communities. Under this plan, we are increasing base funding by 35% for all of our community-based sexual assault centers. Thank you. And our support service for male survivors of sexual abuse program. Of course, having the right services and supports to help a person recover in the immediate aftermath of violence is often only the beginning. Though it is not everyone's chosen route, many survivors look to the justice system for a resolution. We know that approaching the justice system can be hard, if not downright intimidating. We have heard clearly that the current process needs to be more survivor-centric and trauma-informed. That's why we're expanding our pilot project started under the Sexual Violence Action Plan that provides free legal advice to survivors of sexual assault and to make it province-wide. Now, any survivor, Now, any survivor, no matter where they live, regardless of how much time has passed, will have access to free legal advice when they are ready. Of course, we recognize that certain communities have unique needs and that there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to gender-based violence. That's why we are going to open Canada's first ever legal clinic to serve the LGBTQI2S community. While this clinic run by EGAL will serve the Toronto area specifically, the program will also provide education to all 76 community legal clinics on how to create safer, more inclusive spaces for the LGBTQI2S community. We also need to remember that adults are not the only victims of domestic violence. Often, children are caught in the middle, which can lead to a cycle of violence later in life. We recognize that in order to truly end violence, we need to address its root causes. We need to stop it at its source. For 25 years, our province's supervised access program has been helping keep families in high conflict situations connected by providing a safe environment for children to visit their parents. And we're boosting that support to address waitlists and reopen closed sites. We know that family separation and divorce are a time of especially high risk for intimate partner violence. That's why we will be further investing in the Family Court Support Worker Program to identify high-risk families, support children, and prevent further victimization. But we know that supporting survivors in the wake of trauma and working to prevent it from childhood only address half of the spectrum of violence. We must ensure our strategy addresses violence at every stage. It must include a more robust justice system response for offenders. Everyone in this room knows that the only way we are going to end domestic violence is to help offenders take responsibility and stop their controlling and abusive behaviors towards their partners. That's why we are planning to increase funding to the Partner Assault Response Program to respond to the demand for services and reduce wait times. My ministry, in partnership with our community partners, will also be exploring innovative programming options to more effectively respond to those who perpetrate abuse, increase victim safety, to ultimately help break the cycle of violence. Friends, I want to acknowledge the tremendous efforts of organizations and individuals out there already working to make Ontario a safe place. We know that those many of you who are here today, advocates, leaders in the violence against women community, have been working tirelessly to provide assistance to survivors. And today, Ontario, in your government, through our Premier, stepping up to help you in that work. By working together, we can provide support to those who need it, when they need it. So we can address the root causes of violence, we can create a more responsive justice system. Together, we can make Ontario safer for everyone. Thank you for all your hard work. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So was I right that it's like Feminist Christmas? So we want to thank Minister Malhi, Minister Coteau, and Minister Naqvi for leading this conversation. There's ministers that were part of this. We know Indira Naidoo-Harris. We also know Minister Tracy McCharles, Helena Jasic. All of them have created a place where we can have these conversations. As a roundtable co-chair, one of the things that I'm really moved by is the idea that our movement isn't a silo movement, that sexual violence is one place and domestic violence is one place, that we have to address violence at the root and we have to address it together. And this has been an opportunity to really see that the Ontario government is listening when survivors have said that we cannot get service, when survivors have said we're not safe in this province, and when survivors have said that they want services across the province, not just in downtown Toronto, not just in major cities, but in rural and northern communities. This is a really exciting moment for us. I want to say thank you for everyone to be here, and I know the ministers have thanked the movement, but I can't thank folks enough, and thank the people that do the day-to-day work that is really hard, the day-to-day work where you see the hardships and trauma and the impact of violence. You see the impact on families, on children, on mothers, on queer and trans folks. We have to remember that we are here and doing this work, but gosh, we need a moment to celebrate because it's been hard. It's been really hard. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for this important announcement. I'd like to invite the ministers to join on stage for a photo. If members of the media would like to speak to an individual minister, we'll now move to interviews and questions off the stage after the photo. And of course, all the folks, we should be high-fiving, saying hi, hugging, because this is a big moment for us.